Hey folks, happy November 1st, happy Halloween and all that fun stuff from last night. Part 2. I can spoil the ending by saying, yay, I made it home in time for Halloween. That was a little bit of a concern because of the wild travel I had at the end of the trip. Surprised I'm not more jet lagged right now. We'll get to that. Okay, so where we left our story, I was just arrived in Vienna. Berlin, a little bit more about that. I did get to see some really cool exhibits. There was one called Dark Matter. Thanks to Mahmoud for recommending that one. And that was like all sorts of crazy art installations and light things. And there's one room where you lie down and these giant triangle lightsaber things kind of come down at you. And it was like a very VR psychedelic kind of experience. And I actually fell asleep in that room. And I woke up maybe a minute before that cycle ended, the full cycle of like all the lightsaber moving triangle things. And I thought like the world was glitching because I was like, they just did this part. But no, I just managed to sleep for like 20 minutes without even noticing it. There was a really cool stepladder thing where you would touch different parts of the stepladder and make sounds and rock out with some strangers. It was very cross-cultural. It actually reminded me a lot of the last time I was in Germany, which was 10 years ago in 2014 in Witten, where I did a cool thing called 72-hour interactions. Hi, Gilly. And it was this amazing thing that brought together architects and game designers, and we had 72 hours to build a thing from scratch. And yes, this happened in Germany. And as part of that, we needed to create a space for intercultural communication for my team, and we built out these crazy foosball tables, Kickerman, which was sort of like a mini golf course, and we just wanted people to come together regardless of whether they were natural German-born citizens or immigrants and have a fun place to play foosball with each other. Anyways, it had that level of playfulness at the Dark Matter exhibit, and I love that. Anything that bridges cultures and creeds and politics or whatever, and people can just come together, different ages as well, young kids, old men, and just have a fun time together interacting with the world around them in a novel way. So the Dark Matter exhibit, very cool. Recommend that if you go to Berlin. Let's just go through the exhibits real quick. I also got to see I forget the name of the pharaoh, but it was like an Egypt exhibit, actually just like a block from my office. And I went there because I wanted to see their immersive exhibition, which usually in the style of the Van Gogh immersive exhibition is just a big room full of stuff happening around you that's a story or teaches you something. And I haven't actually been to the Van Gogh one, but I did check out the Disney one that was in Toronto when I was at VRTO last year. So I figured, you know what, this is like in the same vein as XR stuff. I should check this out. And much to my surprise, in addition to the like okay rendered Unreal Engine thing that teaches you about some of these ancient Egyptian cultures and traditions, and this one particular pharaoh, whose name I'm not remembering, there was actually VR there. There was two things of VR. And I found this out because when I went to reception, I was chatting with the receptionist, and she is a huge fan of VR, as well as the other members back there. And I actually ended up, long story short, giving them my Quest 3 and my Vision Pro that, as I mentioned in the last video, is just always in my backpack. I gave that to both of them, and they just got to hang out with that for like an hour, trying out different things while I was gone. Was that a dangerous thing to do? No, I trusted them completely after 5 seconds of knowing them. Hasn't done me wrong yet. But the two VR things. One was the worst kind of VR. I felt so upset viscerally at watching like the 20 other people in the room with me going through the same experience. It's in a Vive Focus, but it doesn't matter. It could be in Pico or Quest or anything else. But it is a 3DOF video, carelessly breaking all the rules of what you should not do when you're showing someone a 3DOF video. You are being swung around wildly from side to side. You're an eagle, like flying through ancient Egypt. And again, a lot of beautiful renders, but like also considering it wasn't streaming, it was locally on the device, a ton of compressed video, like a ton of moments where like you're seeing all the artifacts of everything. Like it was like the MP4 was drastically reduced from, 100 or 150 megabits per second, which it should be, down to like 15, which is more what you'd expect on something like, YouTube or whatever. Anyway, that felt great. That felt terrible. That felt really awful. And don't do that when you make a 3DOF video, particularly this rotation. If you're going to make someone change that axis, the roll axis, without their consent. Not a good idea. Anyway, then I was like, okay, that was a bad VR experience. I thought that was the only one. But then I found that they actually had like a mini little VR showroom, a lot like what we have out in Austin, Texas, but more at that consumer level, more in the vein of, Sandbox VR, Sandbox Immersive, Zero Latency, The Void, et cetera, but a big open floor plan with a bunch of Heroku markers, something like 50 Vive Focus 3s, and you all put it on. You have this local multiplayer experience walking through this area where all these people can explore ancient Egypt. And there are some really clever things being done in terms of like how the experiences are offset. So you can actually have people in there who are at different parts in the experience at different times, but you go in with your group and you still are monitoring each other in really novel ways. So I had a great chat with the folks there afterwards, and we talked about, what makes a good historical experience, a good VR experience, a good location-based local multiplayer experience, and decided to stay in touch. That was cool. Just amazing that was a block from the hotel I was staying at, which was a very stylish hotel, by the way. Thank you, Tank, again, for the suggestion of where to stay. I felt like I was surrounded by the hippest of everyone living inside Berlin. There was even like a very particular like incense smell everywhere. Definitely like the fanciest, or not fanciest, but yeah, swankiest hotel I stayed at across this journey. Also, to wrap up the museum thing, I went to the Samurai Museum the morning before leaving Berlin and had a wonderful time there. Oh, and before I forget, going back to my time in Germany 10 years ago, I found spaghetti ice, which is something that I think a lot of Germans think is pretty silly. I think it's amazing. It's basically spaghetti ice cream, raspberry sauce. It's delightful, and hadn't had it in 10 years, and I was really happy to find it again, totally randomly by walking. I mentioned at the start of the last video that one of the big successes of this trip, and this is still true now that I can put Vienna as part of this, is that it's really nice to have kind of like places you want to go, ideally not trying to get there by a certain time, and to just very casually kind of weave your way through a city or an area, especially when you've never been to before, and be open to the discoveries of what happens on the way there. Everything from food to museums to people you end up interacting with to just beautiful sights and moments to stop along a river, for example. So yes, that served me very well throughout the entire journey, but I'm thinking of it here because of the journey to get to the Samurai Museum, where I ended up taking like a bike and a scooter and all these different ways to get there, and saw some amazing things along the way, and recorded some great video with my Ray-Ban Meta glasses that I look forward to doing some funky generative AI stuff for. We'll save that for later. But the Samurai Museum, really quickly, was beautiful. I got a really good scan of a samurai and his horse in there using Polycam, and I just was able to kind of hang out there until I needed to catch my flight over to Vienna. Or is there anything else in Berlin? Just no, it was the night of the clocks turning, and I was very confused because I was up at 3 a.m. and saw the clocks go back to 2 a.m. Maybe absinthe was involved a little bit, like real German absinthe, and so that was also a contributor to how I felt. Is this going on LinkedIn? Yeah, it's okay. It wasn't illegal. I was in Germany. Anyway, made it over to Vienna. That flight was super smooth. It was also the first time I properly slept, by which I mean I don't even remember the plane taking off or going down. So after all these nights of 2 hours of sleep or zero sleep at all, finally got to a point where I was able to actually sleep pretty well on that flight from Berlin back to Vienna. In Vienna, of course, you saw me walking around. I got to meet up then again with Tank, who, again, Berlin, here, the reason I got an AWE ticket, you'll keep hearing Tank's name, and got to explore the city. Went to Mythos Mozart, which was a very cool little exhibit that explored Mozart's life. There was another bust there of Mozart's face that I think I got a pretty good scan of. I loved the way they kind of did maps and showed how dangerous travel was at the time. They talked about how every time you travel in Mozart's time, which Mozart was doing all the time, that you needed to basically get all your affairs in order. Last will and testament, good to go, because there was a pretty decent chance you were going to die on that trip. Remarkable. Also, fun fact, Mozart apparently really didn't like trumpets. He might have had a traumatic experience with a trumpet when he was very young and just never wanted to include them in his music. Anyway, I'm bringing up this because this was also an immersive experience. You went through all these different rooms that were kind of focused on different elements. My favorite room was one where you're kind of in the synapses of Mozart's head, and you're seeing everything light up in his brain as he's conducting a piece. The whole thing relied a little bit too much on the Amadeus movie, which I'm a huge fan of, but the thing I want to bring up and critique is at the very end of the experience, you get a piece by Rafik Anadol, who's a very talented projectionist. That's not true. Media artist. What's the right word for him? Super talented. I did get to kind of collaborate with him on a Song of the Ambassadors for Lincoln Center a few years ago. And of course, everything he's doing with the Sphere is amazing. But this piece was bad, outdated, good for when it came out, which I think was like 2 years ago, because it's using that very, very early form of generative AI, where you're seeing like, Mozart conducting and all these things as the music's playing. And it does all the uncanny valley stuff where the people keep changing but look weird and are morphing into strange stuff. And you get like sometimes eyes are closed and sometimes eyes are open and sometimes they become like translucent and half closed. And it's all very unsettling. So just pointing out that it was a cool tour. I like the pace that you could go on it. There's also some fun stuff where they put your face into a Mozart era painting in the style of clothes at the time. That's all fun. That's all delightful little uses of technology that I think would be particularly great for a whole family. I also stole their Wi-Fi for a while because I needed to upload things, including the last one of these videos. So that was all happening there. Wanted to try, by the way, all of Vienna just smells so good. It all smells like strudel and waffles and chocolate. And I did not indulge as much as I would have liked to, but that's okay. The first night, I went to a restaurant called Tafelspitz with Tipitat. Always great to catch up with Tipitat. And we did the whole thing where we scan all this food. He has hundreds, thousands by this point, Gaussian splats of his food. And it's a wonderful library, quite the legacy for Tipitat, that I'm sure someday he'll be able to donate this thing that's like 30,000 different meals scanned to perfection with photogrammetry and Nerf and Gaussian splat models. Anyway, we went to Tafelspitz, had some really good traditional food there, including things like Tafelspitz, which is the national dish of Austria, and Wiener Schnitzel and other things, and dessert. And then after that, I decided to walk around a little bit and saw a restaurant where things looked like they were happening. People were having a really good time. And I decided at that point to go inside and try to get a drink, try out some local Austrian beer. And they're like, "Oh, sir, I'm so sorry you can't be here." And I'm like, "Oh my God, why not? What did I do? I'm sorry, whatever I did wrong." But I was thinking to myself, like, is it xenophobia? Are they just not friendly towards Americans? Whatever. And they're like, "No, this is a friends and family opening. I'm sorry, you just can't be here today. We open on Wednesday." And I said, "Oh, no problem. I'm going to get out of your hair." But then the guy puts his hand on his shoulder and says, "Well, hey, I mean, as long as you're here, do you want to try our beer?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then I ended up hanging out for like an hour and chatting with these lovely people. "Hi, dog. How are you?" "Okay. How are you?" He's like, "Oh, this is the first time we've gone on a walk in a while. This is a long walk." But they were all super friendly. And I just tell this story to say, like, I had a really lovely time meeting these people of Vienna. They were very, very friendly and generous, and talked about how they worked at a very fancy restaurant that was, especially the head chef, the owner of this new one, and felt like, you know what, we're making really cool food. Could be cheaper, could be more affordable. Our friends should be able to imbibe this as well. And so, yeah, they're bringing this new restaurant, Rosi, ROSI, to life in Vienna. Go support them, go check it out. And it should have some amazing food that you would be more likely to find in much more expensive restaurants. Well, gee, I thought this was only going to be part 2, but I haven't even touched AWE yet, so we'll probably save most of AWE for a part 3 video. But for now, what else do I want to say? Just let's do some general takeaways. Everyone is amazing across these industries. XR, Unreal Engine. One thing I didn't mention from Unreal Day, I'll just pop in here to say it, was I was lucky to also be on an Unreal jury. So I had my masterclass, I had my keynote presentation next to, again, Vladimir, who created MetaHumans and 3Lateral and all that. But there was a jury thing where I got to watch some pitches and even play a couple games from these teams that had made these different Unreal Engine games, and they were really good. And my favorite one, which actually did win, I gave it very high marks in addition to the other jurors, and it didn't look like Unreal Engine. It looked more like a flat 2D game. The lighting was different, and I just want to point out that I really appreciate when an engine is used in such a way where it doesn't look like the thing that everyone expects it to look like. Like a lot of Unreal Engine games are very easily identifiable. This was not that. I'm thinking back to like when I did more direct architecture work, and when Revit first became a really big thing for designing buildings, a lot of buildings started to look like they were made in Revit. And again, the delightful husband-wife team that made this game, where the theme was the only way out is through, created this thing where you're like plants and you're digging through things, and it's a really cool little clever puzzle solving thing that I was very, very tickled by. So that was cool. All right, we'll do more AWE stuff in the next video. If you're enjoying these, let me know. These are fun for me, at least from a video diary perspective. And if they're useful to you as well, or you want to hear me talk more about specific things, let me know, open to feedback. But I'll probably keep doing these. These are fun. Goodbye for now.